inflating the general fund balance over time. It appears that allocating these expenses to the general fund, where a larger percentage of the expense likely belongs, would have the effect of putting the general fund into a larger deficit situation. 3. Transient use tax transfers appear to be outside city ordinance. According to the city's transient use tax ordinance, Title 3, Chapter 34, Section 17F, allocation of funds collected. The first 5% of the money collected pursuant to this chapter shall be allocated by the City Council to any one or more of the following during any one fiscal year as follows: fire and rescue equipment, police services and equipment, promotion and tourism, street and parking improvements, parks and recreation services and equipment, land acquisition and capital improvements, city beautification and urban renewal, provided, however, that no more than 40% of the total funds shall be allocated to any one category during one fiscal year. The balance of 2% of the money collected pursuant to this chapter shall be allocated in its entirety to media advertising to promote tourism, economic development, and a positive business environment in Rockaway Beach. The city is proposing a $60,000 transfer from the transient room tax fund to the general fund without any specific purpose as described per the city ordinance. 4. Civic center operations do not cover debt service. The city generates approximately revenue of $18,800 for the use of the Civic Center. However, the cost of debt service alone is $85,100, a deficit of $66,300 before regular operating expenses. In the past, the deficit in this fund was being paid for with transient room tax funds. However, the transient room tax fund will be depleted by the end of 2013. As a result, it appears that in 2012, the city instead began transferring $50,000 from the utility funds to help cover the deficits for the Civic Center. The transfers of utility fund money could be construed as improper if it is determined that the utility funds do not benefit from the Civic Center operations. However, it's important to note that the effect of these newly developed transfers out of the utility fund essentially draws down the utility funds at a faster rate. 5. Utility funds change in fund balances are budgeted to be negative. The city's 2012 and 2013 budgets call for both the water and sewer funds to dip into reserves in order to pay for ongoing expenses. In other words, current operating expenditures exceed current year revenues. This is likely a result of the shift of payroll burden to the utility funds and the transfer of funds to pay for the debt service in the Civic Center.
Mr. Orloff, I'm going to give about one more minute.
That would be fine. 6, additional funds with current year expenditures exceeding current year revenues, and there's a list of these here. I won't read them, except to note that it totals $970,000. Funds budgeted for ending negative fund balance. Again, there's a list of these: general fund, wastewater improvements, master plan, state revenue sharing, transient room tax. In closing, she says, we understand the fiscal difficulties being faced by many small municipalities. Rising costs of benefits, fuel and materials and supplies, coupled with decreased revenues from state agencies, property taxes, etc., put a real strain on budgets. However, we strongly caution that continued spending of reserves for current year operations instead of making additional cuts of expenditures and or finding additional resources can lead to severe financial difficulties in the future, including the inability to make debt payments, the inability to fund a major system repair, and the inability to provide ongoing services to citizens. Signed, Tiffany Couch, CPA. She has indicated that the Acuity Group would be willing to help the city with analysis of these results and finding a way to restructure the budget to ensure it complies with Oregon budget law. Thank you for your time.
Do you have handouts for us?
I do indeed. For my own self, it seems that this is something which the council and the budget committee really should talk to her about, because if these claims, and she is a forensic analysis, are accurate, we could have significant problems, and I think that would be a very terrible thing.
All right, thank you. Dennis Porter.
Dennis Porter, 409 Crest Terrace, Rockaway Beach, Oregon. In the correspondence that Mr. Orloff had just read to you, one of the items that I wanted to emphasize to you is that funds budgeted for ending negative fund balances. The following funds are budgeted to have a negative fund balance at the end of 2013. It appears that incorrect beginning funding balances have been brought forward, falsely inflating available resources. Those funds are the general fund, 42,000 plus, wastewater improvement master plan, 35,000 plus, state revenue sharing, $650, and the transit room tax, $1,830. I just would like to make sure that this is in the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, George Taylor.
George Taylor, 530 Kesserson Court, Rockaway Beach. You, the city council, as elected officials of the city, have an obligation to make sure that this budget does meet state law. And I think from the analysis that Ms. Cooch has put out, there's some areas of conflict in there. And I think it's your responsibility to look at these and make sure that they are in compliance with budget law. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Council, is there any discussion or questions that you have regarding the proposed budget?
I got a question for Mr. Orloff. Mr. Orloff, this identifies, you presented first, and this identifies the group that hired Acuity Group, apparently as the citizens of Rockaway Beach. Is this, who comprises the citizens of Rockaway Beach?
Well, it doesn't matter.
Yes, it does.
There's just a number of people in Rockaway Beach who are very concerned about the budget.
Are you one of the members of the citizens of Rockaway Beach that
I am
hired
a
for this?
citizen of Rockaway
That
Beach.
isn't my question. Are
And
you
I
a
am.
member of the group identified as
Yes.
citizens of Rockaway Beach? Okay.
I am.
Do you know whether or not Mr. Porter is a member of the citizens of Rockaway Beach?
I am a member.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Is
Porter.
Mr. Taylor?
Yep.
Is Dave Farr?
I attended the meeting.
What
Rodney
is the
Brazell?
purpose of you asking?
I think it's important that we find out who it is.
We have, on appearance, the document suggests that somehow this is commissioned by the city of Tillamook, or excuse me, the city of Rockaway Beach somehow, in representing citizens of Rockaway Beach here.
Well, let me clear that up.
I'm gonna have you go ahead and step up.
Certainly. A number of citizens of Rockaway Beach were very concerned about the state of the finances and budget of the city. And as a group of concerned citizens, we hired the Acuity Group to do an analysis of the budget. It was done privately, no city funds were expended, they were all private and personal funds, because we wanted to get an independent, outside view to determine whether or not our concerns had any merit. This report, which you have a copy of, is a result of that investigation, nothing more.
Do you
It's
know
for,
whether or not
however,
this-
you are free, the city is certainly free to make use of this information. we paid for it.
Acuity Group participate at all in the budget committee hearings?
Nope. They just use publicly available information.
Okay, and is 100% of the information that was provided to Acuity Group present as a part of the pieces of paper that you handed to the
I
council?
think not, because among other things, they looked at least at last year's audit, which is not part of this.
Okay, so we don't know, other than the representations of this individual, what information was
Not at
looked
this
as
moment,
part
but
of-
she would be delighted, I'm sure, to present you with all the information you might want to find out how this analysis was done.
Well, it's a good goal. I mean, everybody wants a good product
Yeah.
in terms of the city budget and wants to do things according to the law. But
Indeed.
when a piece of paper comes in and makes accusations against the council, who's doing their best to try to follow the law, that, and the council has no way, or the city has no way to gauge the data on which the analysis was based, because if that data is not being provided as a part of the report, then.
Well, that's a reasonable question, but as I said, she would be delighted to come and meet with the council, because her concern is to make sure that everything is indeed okay. She has looked at this and red flags showed up. She was worried about that. If you want to see all the data that she used, which is actually just budget data that's public information from the city and the audit reports. She'd be happy to show all that to you, and I think she'd be happy to show areas where there may be problems and how to try and get around them. That's the whole point of this.
The city does have its own auditor of record that prepares that audit, and then city prepares the budget.
Yes, of course.
And so I don't know if this is somebody fishing for a job or what exactly.
Oh, I don't know whether they're fishing for a job. I mean, the acuity group has been called in
Like the state.
deal with different cities' problems. As I said, if you look in the newspaper, you'll find that they helped Malala find difficulties with their budgets, and I believe also the city of Oak Ridge. She's not fishing for a job, we hired her. She came and requested public information from the city, such as the audit, the budgets. She examined that in her capacity as a certified public accountant who has many years' experience doing forensic accounting and investigative accounting work. And these are her conclusions. They're being offered gratis to the city. They said, we paid for it, the city did not. If the city does not have any interest in this or doesn't want to use it, you can ignore it.
Well, I think the city will take the accusations very seriously.
I wouldn't say they're accusations. She's pointing out areas of difficulty, and I think these ought to be investigated. I would be very happy if it turned out this was all wrong, and there's nothing wrong with the city budgets, but from the information that's just provided there, I'm not sure that's the case. I am not an accountant myself. I do not have competence in that area, so I'm not going to speak to it. She, on the other hand, has many years' experience doing this sort of thing, does have the competence, and so I would be concerned, indeed, that what she's saying has some merit, and I think it should be investigated. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She did note one glowing thing in the budget, and that is the amount of office time that is allocated to the utility fund. 80 to 90% of the hours that are charged to sewer and water, or 80% of certain selected employees in the office, their time is being charged to the city of sewer and water. And it's hard for me to, and it's hard for her to understand too, how the city manager and all the other office staff in there can be devoting 90% of their time to city water and sewer.
Do you know whether or not she contacted city to ask questions to resolve that issue?
No, I don't know. I don't know for sure on that. But her points were that if you've got a city manager and you've also got a public works director, why is a city manager charging 80% of his time to water and sewer? That's just one of the questions that she asked. And like John said, you know, you can do with it what you want. We paid for it, and we think you should consider it before you pass this budget.
Well, you handed the council, how many pages? 20, 25
24.
pages of material at a time when they're prepared to pass a budget and expect them to digest that at this meeting?
They should have been digesting the budget, going through the budget process, and asking themselves questions about, is this really correct? Is this within Oregon budget law?
You're operating on something dated today that makes accusations that wasn't present or part of the budget committee hearing, and saying that council should consider it before passing their budget.
They should. And if that means they put off passing the budget until the next city council meeting, so be it.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional council inputs? All right, we're gonna close this hearing for the budget at 6:31. Presentation, guests, and announcements. I don't have any. Well, yes, we do, sorry. Rockaway Beach Chamber of Commerce requests to use the Wayside. We have two requests by the Chamber of Commerce. One is for starting today through the 17th. And the other one is for June 22nd through June 24th. I just have a quick question. How
Madam
come we're
Mayor.
just getting these now?
Oh, no, they-
I would worry that if somebody had already